podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
Wow. So, since our last conversation, something we mentioned in passing that could happen, totally happen, and that being that Kevin McCarthy, McCarthy. So Kevin, McCarthy, yeah, was basically fired from his job on his day off, sort of, not totally. You know what I'm saying? Like, in a sense, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, yeah, he did a thing, made a bipartisan moves to keep the government operational. And then I guess, in many ways, you would definitely consider trying to shift his party's move and saying, look, man, maybe we can't be doing this, like, try to shut down the government every 2 months thing. Like, is this really, are we getting somewhere with this? You know what I mean? And I guess would be maybe, I don't know. I can't get totally into the mind of people who do silly stuff, but I'm trying. And the idea of making a deal, and then I guess all the layers. One, he knew, it was like, he knew going in the people on his side that was going to go, nah, man, we're going to try to get you out of here. And then basically, which is the even wilder part, I guess, is the ironies of like, yo, the Dems being able to go kind of like, hey, we'll save you, bro. You willing to make a deal? keep you in the game if you want to make a deal. And then it was like, nah, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that. We ain't saving you. You're your own. And since then, amidst a flurry of world chaos and mayhem, the internal chaos and mayhem of a current sort of I guess policy or political, not really policy, political practice that has sort of embraced this idea that the world doesn't, whatever the other role of all this doesn't matter. It just matters what we want to be happening in this space. Is how I look at it. It's like, our job is, in our role, in our presence in this space, is not about necessarily like the overall higher ideas of a democratic representative republic, but it's how we think power should be wielded and what we think we should be doing. It might be a little hard and cynical, but that's what it says to me. And so since then, we have no Speaker of the House, which means no, we are a few weeks away from a government shutdown, more than likely, and also just the people's business cannot be done. Everything. So, we don't have to be all serious, but it is interesting, like, this is the whole thing playing out, that the same people, So before I say anything else, I wanted to give you some air what were some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah,
occurrence?
Well, a couple things. Number one, for a long time, Americans would look at other countries and they would have coups and they would have all kind of stuff going on. And we would talk about our relative lack of, political chaos and talk about our system being better. And now, not to say anything that we a lot of times interfered in other countries that influenced them to have political, chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not always in every situation. I don't want to do that, but it is on record that we have done it. And we've had this, kind of smug attitude about governance and government. And I have a message. That shit's over. Like, we are no better than most of the countries in the world. Like, last January 6th, a group of motherfuckers stormed the actual Capitol and tried to find elected officials they did not agree with to do something to. What? We don't know, but they want to do something to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean,
we know that.
at a minimum, they would, I'm
Pour
sure
water
that,
on their heads, take a
right.
shit
I'm
on
sure
their
they would say, like,
desk.
yeah, I was just going to go in, we just going to scare them. We wasn't going to really hurt nobody. Well, yeah, nobody was there for you to hurt, but,
We don't know what you would have did. We do know you took a shit on the desk. We know you pissed on stuff. You stole shit. We know that. It's on record.
right. We got documentation.
And
That's
now
a
we
wild
have a
thing to do.
situation
Mhm.
where, and this is, and it's what's interesting about this. I was reading an article about Newt Gingrich, who many people blame, if you will, for the beginning of this kind of stuff. And same thing happened to him in 1998, right? Then it happened to Boehner. Then it happened to Ryan. Then it happened to McCarthy. Ryan was the smartest one. He just got out before it got too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So he could keep his name and keep his name good in DC, right? So we just have a process now that just shows we have one party who is currently incapable of managing itself. And I want to reiterate and think about this on a national level of only having two parties. We have one that is entirely incapable of managing itself. And they're open to tell you that, and they're open to actually shut down the government for their interests. And so, in America, we can go back to like watching television and shit. We watch the game and, Beyonce and Taylor Swift are doing shows and it's football season. So we can kind of get away from the level of dysfunction that is currently existing on the federal landscape. But I
Mm-hmm.
think we should be honest and open about it. Right. It doesn't mean that I'm the guy with the, that I'm Lucy, that every time Charlie tried to kick the ball, I bring the ball up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think we need to look at this like in McCarthy, it's also the limit to wheeling and dealing. Like you can't negotiate with someone who won't negotiate. And there are a number of people in the Republican Party who are not negotiating. Now, I will say this real quickly. I think the Democratic Party is going to have a challenge in the next year. Because I think there's a number of things that will create some open cracks. So some things are happening now that are going to create some open cracks, right? But I think it just shows the frankly just the breakdown of our governance model on a federal level. And you've seen that in the wisdom of Black women from time immemorial, fuck around and find out, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, uh, McCarthy and the Republican Party, they got the X and Y axis. They fucking around and they find it out.
Yeah, like,
But the joke's on us.
right. We all gonna have to deal with the ramifications of it. I mean, the while I was, scanning and reading a couple of different articles, reporting on it, and like the one I guess Jim Jordan looks like the one or the leader, but it's people that don't rock with him. And it was a Scase. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
Matt Gaetz. Yeah.
No. I think the other person who was like in
Oh, the other person's
consideration.
going to run, but he's a McCarthy guy. Yeah, I mean that
Yeah.
the politics, right? And I'm going to say this. This is my perspective. I think America needs more than two political parties. I think we are jamming circles into squares. We are jamming people who have some alignment, but not enough alignment to govern. And what we're seeing is the Republican Party in its multiple permutations now does not have enough in common to govern.
Yeah. Yeah.
And instead of being like, okay, well, we're this party and we could have deal with y'all. We're this party. We want a little bit so everyone can keep their thing and then manage it. We're trying to manage these really diametrically opposed concepts under one tent, and we see the failure of
it. Yeah, and I like trying to like understand the because it's one of the things. It's almost like I'm like, so I mean, like I get it, like you're like, all right, we're on our side, so we're on some like, all right, we just want us to always vote on for like our team, so to speak. But then within that, it's like it would be like the most if we was getting if the mission was as a group we were all gonna order hot sauce and you may not be into hot sauce but you like a nice flavor moderate hot sauce, but then at the other end of the table there's some ghost pepper, this bottle of ghost pepper, and the ghost pepper people are like the only hot sauce we can have is this ghost pepper.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And if y'all don't want us to have this ghost pepper, then we ain't having nothing. Right. And then it's like, yo, but it's like, fam, like I dig it that y'all on that ghost pepper, but come on, man. You can't be serious that you want us all to have a ghost pepper. Like some of us, I'm just not eating that ghost pepper. Like, as a person who has at least once or twice, shout out to my father-in-law, like eating something like, super hot sauce, little hot thing at a restaurant because he liked the hot sauce. And I'm like, I'll go for it with you. It's like it's no fun eating something that's super duper hot. Like it just
Yeah. As a
what I'm
person who
saying?
likes that kind of shit, you're right. At some point, it's more man versus
Right.
dominating like the idea of anything around you more than the flavor profile.
Yeah, it's like, haha, I told my my taste buds I was the bastard of all I survey. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so and it's like it's cool if you're dealing with a personal decision that impacts mostly you and maybe your family. But if it's like, there's a whole other world that is dependent upon your governance and your leadership, and then you like, nah, man, we're gonna get this ghost pepper, or somebody that's ghost pepper friendly, got to be in the chair. You know what I'm saying? They got to be up there, and we don't want to agree on nothing. And I read a couple articles. It was sort of like the Senate side, kind of like they have to know that like y'all might get this person, but y'all ain't gonna pass nothing. Like basically, like nothing you got is getting through Senate. If you think you're gonna get that there's some leader that you could get that will have the capacity to do what you want, right? And knowing, and everyone has, whoever you are when you're actually operating in the political space, at some point you got to have a sense of like, where do I fit in the landscape? If I know I'm way over here on the issue, I'm way, whatever, I don't really want to say left or right. Just your position is I'm on this part of this issue,
Right.
and that's a far out-ish point position. You got to have some level of like, all right, if I want to get some like on these other stuff that maybe I'm not way over there on, that work needs to happen too. And I do have some responsibility. I have a level of responsibility to the greater, which again is an assumption that one may make, and I guess could naively make, and definitely I think throughout our life. I mean, I would say both, but definitely Democrats have been more in the position of like, well, I'm sure they care. I'm sure they love their children too. Going back even to the Reagan days where it's like, dog, sometimes, I mean, most of the time they like them, you know what I mean? But they would definitely, screwed up various, institutions and structures, within our society in the name of, getting what they want. And then on the back end, we have destabilized, Social Security because people just couldn't stop looking at that money in the early 80s. It's like, man, we could totally use that money and get it back. And it's like, no, you can't. And it's like, no, it'll be fine. It's like, no, you can't. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. And they were like, all right. And they're like, oh, guess what? We was wrong.
Right. We can't. My bad.
We should just left it alone. Yeah, I know. You should just left it alone, B. Like if you just left it alone, it would have been fine. But you just couldn't hold back, huh? Like, nah, I had to have it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we get to this place now, and it's so, I was reading an article, and it just to give context to like the Lauren Boebert we see on TV, if you watch TV news and that sort of thing, like the national Lauren Boebert and then like the local Lauren Boebert are like two different people because she like has to actually be sort of like a real human to in order to stay elected and can within the context of her constituency, for whatever it's worth, can be perceived as like a reasonable person who doesn't, vape and be playing grab booty in a public movie theater and cussing people out. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? You know what I'm saying? She might be, nice enough person, or her constituency, at least those who voted for her, trust her to actually serve their interests. and don't and see can see the larger framing of maybe being more extreme as a tactic to get something done, right?
Right.
It always just gets to the place where at what point is the tactic to get something done actually becoming counterproductive to anything getting done? And again, as we've stated before, if you actually think it's in the best interest of like America, United States to like shut down again, shut down for 3 4 weeks or however many weeks
You're
to
wrong.
do something. I don't know what thing we're shutting down for. Right.
Yeah.
Like, what are we actually, so like that's where it gets, interesting for me. And then yeah, so
I mean, I
that's
think
what
just following this logic, and again, this is where like the system obviously is, if you represent a couple 100,000 people who are all in locations, and in America right now, if you represent a couple 100,000 people, those people probably think somewhat similar, generally speaking,
mm-hmm.
right? So that's just, if you represent an area of dense, what's the name, 300,000 people, it's not that much of land, right? And so they probably are all, have some similar interests. And if you represent 300,000 people, that's is spread out as all get out because, it might be hard to come by 300,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
But you have, part of, the Fox News and MSNBC, I'd be remiss, like the spreading of like you get your news from your angle. And then you constantly, and then I think that the Republican or the conservative side of this, frankly, is much more developed and sophisticated. They got radio shows, they got stuff you can buy, right? Like channels you can like for $8.99, like watch certain shows. And all the
Mm-hmm.
shows do is reinforce things to you, some of which are not true, but much of which just reinforce you being in your own space, which creates a populace who will say things like, man, just shut it down. And then you get people that actually run for office who are like, what do they want to hear? Shut it down. And it's like to shut down the government, you're harming people. And the fact that you want to do that to prove a point, and you don't have a block of people. It's not like you have hundreds of votes in the
Right, in the house.
in the house. Like if we had hundreds of votes,
You
then we
got
have a
what,
larger
like,
problem, right? Because
was
now
it
you got
like
hundreds of
20 and
votes.
30? It's not even, it's double
15,
digits.
between 8 and 15, like
Yeah.
the
It's like
400 people.
yo, y'all need to like kind of like, so, and I guess I don't know if I don't know what the language of kind of like, hey man, it's only like 15 of y'all over there. Like, I hear y'all talking, but it's like 15 of y'all over there. So like at some point y'all
Well,
need to chill
again,
out.
because everyone's in this tent, every person matters for the Republicans to keep
Right.
control. And also, traditionally, I would argue that Republicans have not the leadership of how they have kept it together with bubblegum and scotch tape, right? Has been as such where most be like, wait, so you can't be in charge if I'm not down? Huh. Okay.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna need this. Oh, I can't do that for you. Okay. Well, you're not getting my vote. Okay, I'll give you that. Okay, and give me this too. I can't give you that. Well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess the question that starts to get me too, though, like, is this what what we're experiencing now? And I mean, the next election is going to be an interesting time. Um, are we getting close to where? Because a part of the backstop of a really, besides the actual organizing and groundwork that it would really require for a viable, um, multi-party, 3 or 4 party system to grow and appear viable is at some point the money that that operates in how campaigns run would need to create the space where because one there's we're so far down a sort of orientation for voters, and particularly the voters who predominantly vote, who are older people, and that's just facts. In case everybody, I just saw some data. this weekend at the end of it. It was like, yeah, the people
Yeah,
that
that's just the
are,
facts. You're right.
that's just, ain't nobody trying, it's no shade. Anybody trying to say you ain't a real, you don't love the world or whatever. But it's facts that older people vote and not older people don't vote consistently, even if they vote, just it's just facts. And so when you start talking about who you're influencing, who you're trying to get to show up, who you're trying to sway, you know, is the window where folks think, because we've been hearing most of our life, like, oh, any year now, this wave of like everyone who's more like quote unquote us age, our generation thinks this way, that way is going to be, and it's going to be significantly different. And the data shows that there's a significantly that one, some of those voters that would be in that next window are significantly more conservative than folks think, at least on some issues. And or they're not as like they're not as progressive as folks may think they are, at least in how they have voted so far. And but also like and I'll use this like I haven't paid much attention to it because it just seems like a the guy, the other dude, the dude that's running as an independent for president, and all I can ever think of, I'm like, so everyone who big money people and Silicon Valley and whoever ever, like if he was to win, how do you think he could effectively govern with no stakes from either party? Like, how
Right.
do you really think he could effective if this dude was to win and it was a major turnout of the independent vote and he got in as president and everything else stayed the same? Like the dude's gonna have to play ball with somebody to get anything
Right.
done.
And who's he held accountable? Right. He's going to have to, and he doesn't, to your point, besides a federal election. And I think to me, the key is it actually has to start on local level. So this idea of whether it was Ross Perot, whether it was, Buchanan, always used to say he was going to run, right? Whether you're talking about RFK, you're talking about Cornel West, whatever everyone's take on this is, the Green Party from last time. You have to start having that distinction on local levels. And it's not easy because you have to organize it and then put money behind it. One thing I'll share is for folks who are listening to research the Working Families Party. Now, different people have different perspectives of how this has worked in New York, and now it's working in Philadelphia, where they are competing with Republicans for the minority seats in city council. Mm. And there's a lot of stomach, a lot of heartburn around this, but I do think you would have to have it where they were voting for these folks, not just for president and not just for Congress, but they were voting for them for state treasurer. They were voting for dog catcher. They were, you know what I mean? Like tax assessor. Like you would have to actually create the infrastructure where that people who were aligned in that regard were running up and down the ballot. You can't do this whole, well, this person will just be president and it'll work. Like it's not going to work. It's going to destabilize the model even more. And it's also, and I bring this up, and I've been on different sides of this throughout time, and now I'm on the side of the outside looking in, not being the insider looking outside. Mm-hmm. But I do think we have to have the conversation of, what elected officials are. You got to look at the numbers, and I get it. But also, when are you having a personal touch that even if someone disagrees with you on a big level, they still see the leadership in you to represent them, right? There are no two people who agree on everything all the time, right? So once we acknowledge that, then everything from there is, well, how can we make sense of our disagreements and how do we, kind of add on and build on what we share together? And I think elected officials and people who want to be elected officials have to do a better job at here's my positions for whatever reason, and then here's my touch with people. And you see it all the time. I mean, you see it in certain states, like Jesse Ventura was the governor of Minnesota. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California, right? Like, and I read an article about this guy, Jim Justice, who is the governor of West Virginia, who was a Republican, then became a Democrat, then became Republican again. right? Like, and listen, he's running West Virginia into the ground, but he's probably going to win again, right? Because he goes to events and be like, "Hey, look at my dog. Take pictures with my dog." Now, whatever you think about that, but like he has a personal touch, and even people who were not fully agreeing with him, they like his leadership. You can take that for what it is. But I just think elected officials have to be true to their thing. But you know, on whatever sides of the equation, populism is mattering, and it's been mattering for almost 20 years now. So this is not like a flash in the pan. Okay, it'll go back to the way it was if we just let the kids, kind of dance all night, right? The kids will go to
Mm-hmm.
sleep at 11 o'clock. The kids are staying up.
Yeah.
So at some point, we do have to have a conversation. If you're going to be populist, frankly, you might as well be populist in ways that are helping people versus populist in ways that veer into authoritarianism, which is
Right.
where I think Trump, right? Like I think
Right.
Donald Trump is explicitly engaging in populism as a veneer for authoritarianism.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
anyone who thinks about that, I want to say this, and I know that some of the brothers who I'm talking to aren't necessarily listening to this podcast. But if you know these brothers, you tell them this. And this is not me putting up a sign called riding with Biden, but this is just a fact.
Absolutely.
If you think because he signed a check during a global pandemic and gave you money for you not to do anything as a reason that person should be president again, you're wrong.
Yeah. There ain't gonna be no more checks.
You're right. There ain't gonna be no more checks. If you think the streets is the money gonna flow because Trump is back in, you're wrong.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
straight up, and anybody that got a cousin or a homie in the barbershop, because that is definitely barbershop talk.
yeah.
You're wrong. Like this is populism as a veneer for authoritarianism.
Yeah. And it's definitely there are a contingent of people who and I sometimes will bring these. I've tried different ways to say it in mixed and polite company, as I say, around the wanton, history of violence within our society. And that, like, I actually told someone in a conversation this weekend, like, there once was a time in America where, and it was in a speaking of, context of where I'm at now here in Oregon, but in the world in general, where like, there were a lot of places in America where if for whatever reason, um, folks whom we would perceive as black were doing well or were just being there, and folks who didn't care for that, didn't want them to be there, could just violate their civil and human rights and have a realistic expectation that nothing would happen to them. That there would be no penalty outside of whatever retribution the persons who they actually were being violent with could wield. Like it would just be over. There wouldn't be a lawsuit later. There wouldn't be a criminal case. Someone would go, well, I know that was probably difficult for you. I'm sure you had to do you were just trying to do to protect your family or any number of, totally flimsy and morally reprehensible reasoning. But and we've effectively made that a distasteful thing to do, outside of, a very few set of circumstances, which we're not going to rehash today. Um, you know, there are people who pine for that level of society, not necessarily just for Black folks, but whomever, if they felt that they could engage in violence or at least threaten violence, and they would, I feel there are people who are like, yeah, I want that kind of world again. You know what I'm saying? There are folks who, um, you know, people are nibbling on the edge of we can use not just in some sort of de facto way where state power may be disenfranchising people via violence or terror, but actually go like, yeah, nah, we our solution to every sociological issue is, well, we'll just bust some heads, right? You know what I'm saying? As I have tried to articulate to people, and I'll say it here in our space, it's like, if you are threatening or calling for more police presence to move humans from anywhere, at some level, you're saying that there's an acceptable level of bodily harm that can be done to those people to move them, because that's the backstop of the authority is the capacity to do violence. So saying all that to say, the tough talk of authoritarian rule historically has always been accompanied with the idea that, yeah, like they might let us, if we don't like somebody, go ahead and attack them and not have to worry about being charged with a crime or in some other way being held responsible after the fact. And the idea that folks continue to entertain that risk, to me, it's just distasteful. It's like, hey, man, like you seem to believe it won't happen to you if this is the world that we head towards, right? And then you might say, well, you're being hysterical, you're being over the top. And I'm just like, I don't know. I done studied enough, not just of United States history, but history of the last 150 years as we've had the industrial states. And, violence is always there. It's always creeping behind the populist leader. It's a couple steps behind them is, yeah, there's going to be a incident in a small town or a strike that gets busted up via some, other than unsavory means. Like there's lots of stories and evidence out there. I'm not going to rehash those. So, it's a very interesting place that we're in. It's a very, sort of like the idea, and I think I've articulated like when you can be obstinate and out of pocket because there's no within the context of what we're doing, there's nothing I could do. Right. So like, the 8 to 15 people who are like, yeah, man, we're gonna use our position if we can to shut down the whole US government. And that'll stick it to them. And, politically, it's probably the right play for Democrats to be like, nah, that's your squad. Like they might be betting on the idea that the continued inability to govern at some point will translate to some contingent of, either independent voters or, moderate conservatives or moderate whomever, I don't know, will go, man, maybe I really can't vote for some of these people. Maybe these people are not the people that we should keep letting, have majorities. But the experience of all those decisions is super localized. So it's very hard for most of us to think of our decision making within the context of something as abstract as like, well, I'm going to go vote and do some civil action. And then like 399 other people somewhere else are going to get like voted in or they're going to be there. Like I'm somehow connected to that, but I don't know that them people and I don't even know where they live. It's a lot. It's a lot for the human experience to manage. So I don't know. Welcome to the world of leaderless chaos. I guess is a very
yeah. I mean, and it's indicative of a set of broader things that has just been more prevalent. And again, I mean, I think there's just other conversation around with everything else going on in the world in various spots, right? I mean, there's at least 3 to 4 places that are flashpoints for violence and right now in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, America, call it what you will, whatever decisions we've made, but the idea that now, because our government doesn't have a Speaker of the House to be able to actually negotiate with the head of the Senate and the president to be able to represent the needs and intentions and thoughts of these 400 Congress people.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't downplay that. Like that's a new place for America. And it's a new place for America in a like we talked about, I talked about like this idea of there's not just one power in the world, it's not just two, right? There's not just like, okay, well, there's the United States and Russia. There are multiple power centers who have varying degrees of alignment with each other depending on interests. And so if any time that the American government needs to be quite like clear-eyed about that is actually now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have a functioning government, how clear-eyed can you be?
So,
So
before we move to more, I think at least entertaining topics. The other thing I guess I would say, because I did want to lose thread up that you brought up. I mean, I think there's definitely a space that we're entering if folks really build the local level, work of developing space for more party, affiliations and I think if we want to really have a truly healthy representative democracy, it would actually be really great if we did that across people's political, ideology. Because I know sometimes folks can frame that as, you just want somebody more progressive or more like you or more whatever. I'm like, nah, just if it was some real like options out there, like you go to the meetings and they be like, well, we're here on this issue and we like to organize this way. This is how we do our fundraising. Da da da. I think that there's a place for a more deliberative, deliberating. Did I say that right? Deliberative. That a word? Might be a word. Who knows? What you gonna do?
hey man, just go ahead. Come on, brother. It's African American vernacular
You know what I'm
English, brother.
saying? So, I mean, shout out to what I'm saying, brothers on the internet that be banging on people when they try to come at him. The Summit Show brothers. Shout out to him. You know what I'm saying? Like it would probably be better for us to have more parties and then just like, look, we have a negotiation of ideas, and sometimes if your ideas never seem to win. I mean, I ain't saying your ideas is bad. They just ain't winners. What we gonna do?
And they don't represent the state of people today, right? Like
right.
it doesn't mean you're wrong. It just might mean you haven't convinced the people today
that you're right.
That you're right.
Yeah. And what more can you ask for? I think that's a fair experience.
Absolutely.
Word up. All right. So fix that. You know what I'm saying? Lock that down. We did that.
and we'll be here to talk about it.
So another definitely less pressing to the operation of, people's futures. Somebody's man's. I don't know who to call Drake's man's. I won't say he's your man's because you my man, so you can't be his man's and shit because he ain't my man.
Yeah.
But Drake puts out a record, and I ain't listen to all of it. And I'll just tell everybody I don't listen to almost anybody unless I really like you record like in totality when it come out. It's very so like the Drakes and the whomever y'all could probably think of the world's a good chance I ain't listened to it yet, at least not all the way. But I heard enough, and then I heard enough chatter about it. That this at least he's like 40 years old now, right? He's like 40, 37 almost. Is like apparently like making jabs at Rihanna, or he brought Esperanza Spalding's name up in a song, right? Like
right from an issue 11 years ago,
right? Which in a very, if you know me, and shout out to I don't know if you listen, but to my great community homie who's a relative of Esperanza, and so I consider Esperanza in the Rajee circle of protection, which means Drake, watch it. Be cool, bro.
Be cool, bro.
You know what I'm saying? Slow down, slow your roll.
Yo,
talk the real slick over there. You know what I'm saying?
Be cool, slow down.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't saying nothing gonna happen to you. I'm just saying, man, be cool, man. You ain't gotta be tripping. You ain't gotta be acting. You ain't had to bring nobody's name up like that. Right. But
be cool.
Just the general idea. I'm a 47-year-old man. Ain't a lot of people in the world that I want to like bring your name up. If I was going to be like, what I want to do? I want to write a rap this week. I mean, maybe I can talk about like a geopolitical figure or something, right? But just like somebody I had a bad relationship or didn't work out, or they won a prize and I didn't, like however 2 decades ago or some shit. Like I just can't imagine like being like, yeah, I mean, should have been us at the team talent at the agency
we
talent show.
That 12-inch deal. We should have got that 12-inch deal. Like what? You don't enjoy your life? Get the fuck out of here.
I got kids. Like I got
nobody want to hear about that.
Family, what are we doing? So I don't know if you could give me any thoughts or I don't, because what's happened? What kind of grown man does this?
Well, I mean, and I think it's an interesting. So I think there's structural stuff that lends itself to this like outcome. One, Michael Jackson had a lot of fans, but you didn't know Michael Jackson had a lot of fans until Michael Jackson got out of a limousine, right? Like the only time you knew Michael Jackson had a lot of fans was everybody in front of the limousine or the show.
Right,
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 everybody
right,
show up with a glove, including
right,
me. Right, I showed up with
right.
a
Yeah,
glove.
the jacket. Yeah, you get the gloves.
Listen, I went to the. It wasn't Veterans Stadium. It was actually the other joint. Was it RFK? Not RFK. There was another stadium in Philly right next to Veterans Stadium in the
Oh,
Spectrum. You know what I'm talking about, the big one that no one ever used. But Michael
yeah.
Jackson, that's where they would do the shows, and they wouldn't do it at the Vet. They would do it at this other stadium, which I'm sure is in your mind. The name of the
Hey,
stadium.
oh snap! Is it Franklin Field or something?
No, Franklin Field's
No,
Penn
that's my
Stadium.
pen. That's pen. Oh
But this
man,
stadium, which
it's gonna eat me up.
I'm not thinking about right now, but anyway, went to see Mike there. And so my point is, you knew who had fans like that, right?
Mhm.
So it's different now where we have the means by which we know where you stand in regard to an artist by how much you actually bombard other people who disagree with your perspective. Whether it's the Beehive, whether it's Barbies, whether it's Drake fans, right? Like you have people who literally swarm and act in a kind of groupthink when it comes to being angry at people who disagree that you don't like the artist. Number one. That's actually not number one. That's a piece of it. Number one is when Biggie, well, shouts out to the Bay when people talk about player haters, right? And, the context of player hater, for those who might need some context on it, is you was hating real players in the street, right? Real
Mhm.
players was doing things legal, illegal, and you were not liking the fact that a player made his moves.
Yeah.
First of all, those are the kind of terms that shouldn't have came out of the street. I'm of the perspective certain terms should never come out the street because they only make sense in a certain context.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
But now we've gotten to a point where if you disagree that an album is good, you are a hater.
Mm.
And we saw it a little bit during the Puffy times, right? Like when we were doing music, right? But now we're in full fledged. If you say an album is as the kids say mid, right? You are looked at as a hater because that person is doing well. And Drake, re- remarkably, being a student of the art. See, one thing about Drake that's actually really interesting is when you think about Drake, you used to listen to Lil Brother, listen to Dilla, bought mics that Pusha T rapped on, right? Like all this crazy shit, right? Like
Mm.
was a true student of the art of hip hop, and then made a decision to do pop music, which thank you for sharing the Entume
Mm.
interview on Questlove, where he says something really amazing. Like when you're studying jazz, you're trying to master complexity, but when you're doing pop music, you're trying to master simplicity,
Mhm.
and it's difficult to master simplicity.
Yeah.
So I don't look at pop artists as like bad because you're mastering something that like keeps an idea in millions of people's heads.
Right.
So
Mhm.
Drake, you came from this guy, you're this guy, and people, you've produced an album like damn like every year. You've had arguably the best run, the best uh discontent, kind of like continuous run of any hip hop artist. It sounds wild to say that, but if you think about it, the guy's been in the collective consciousness since 2011 and 12, and I can't remember a year where he hasn't had a song
Mm.
that hasn't been in the collective consciousness since 2010.
Yeah. Yeah.
Album might not be the best, all that, but I'm saying a song. And I don't really think there's an artist in hip hop right now that has had that kind of run. I think Jay had a more impactful but shorter run.
Mhm.
I think Wayne had a more impactful but shorter run.
Yeah.
And I think Future is probably the closest, but just isn't as big because he just talks about being on drugs and like taking your woman. he like, to be Future is like a blues. He is like, if hip hop ever really got to like somebody who just talked about the blues, it would be Future. Like, I take drugs. I got more money than you. I drink
Right.
champagne. Your girlfriend will do strange things with me she wouldn't do with nobody else. Like,
Uh,
you know what
what
I
a
mean?
premise.
To
Right.
to to a relatively simplistic and continuous beat that doesn't really change. But anyway, like, so I say that to say, but when you get to a place like that, you've had the best run. You're 37 years old. Your topically you haven't shifted, right? And you respond to a rapper who was a very good technical rapper, regardless if Joe Budden was a pop success.
Right. Right. Joker rap.
Joe Budden could rap. You knew Joe Budden could rap. So if he tells you he likes your record, but you need to change your output, like change your lyrical output, for you to write a paragraph shows how sensitive you are to the ideas that you're not your peers, which I'll go into later. But yeah.
It's like, and I don't, you know, it's a weird just because and I guess I had these conversations with my kids about music and like and I guess it's a subject matter. The way it shows up right now is a lot of just like the number of we have this proliferation of artists, particularly of like women artists who have very provocative lyrical content. You know what I'm saying? In many ways, not too much unlike some very provocative lyrical content of some other ages of now in the past. You have the juxtaposition of the current moment, the amount of more male artists and men artists that are men, whom subject matter tends to either be around that's in the future drugs and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or sliding on the ops. You know what I'm saying? Like various 5,000, how you say, your war stories, guts and glory, going and shooting your opposition or being pursued by the opposition or the opposite, whatever the nature of it may be. And so, in these conversations, but then also these conversations around like, or is listen to a lot of music, a lot of other stuff, you know what I'm saying? Quite eclectic stuff, you know what I'm saying? They're all over the map with it. And their generation engages, I'll be thinking about like sometimes I'll be like, look, I'm in a DAS damn childhood chokehold on a lot of stuff musically. Although
Absolutely.
I do have a diverse palette, and I can appreciate, some classical, some this, some that. You know what I'm saying? It's cool, but it's there's stuff like I don't join in on like, well, this person is popular and therefore like I feel like I need to know about it so I can feel young too. So like the Taylor Swifts of the world, like I'm just not. I don't feel compelled to try to like
Let
it.
me touch on that. You know, um, you're a hell of a podcast host, Just. You just feed the masses. You just got ideas. It's everywhere. It's a really smart guy. This is another part of it. Nas had a song with Second Childhood. I maintain that because hip hop is fundamentally a youth culture, right? And take from that what you will, because 19-year-old in 1988 is kind of different than a 19-year-old today. And that's just in America. Take from that what you will, right? We see those memes where you had like an R&B singer that was 26, they was already balding. And you know what I'm saying? And now like an R&B singer looks like a 19-year-old now. But hip hop, because of the people who are listening to it, for mass engagement, you're probably keeping the subject matter at like somewhere between 18 to 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the people who are listening to it are not 18 to 25, which is what I'm talking about.
Right.
There's some old motherfuckers listening to hip hop relating to this idea of being between 18 and 25 or 18 and 30 if you want to be liberal with it. right? And they're producing music that constantly touches back to that. To your point about ops, like if we're talking about community violence, there's a certain age of people who are involved. Now, obviously, there's always some of the guys that's a little too old to still be in the game, and then there's kids who shouldn't be in the game, right? But generally, the people who are in the game are a certain age. So when you keep doing these songs and you're sliding on ops, but you got 45, 50-year-olds going to work listening to it and then being like, okay, you ready for work? Slide your card in. You know what I mean? Like, we have a situation where we're producing a music that doesn't talk about social issues. We're producing a music that now only kind of talks about relationships in a one-dimensional way. We talk about relationships that are increasingly almost totally transactional.
Yeah.
Like, what are men getting out of it? What are women get out of it? You're going to pay me to do this. I'm going to give you some money and you'll do a lot of stuff for money. And so the danger of it is that for me, and this is trying not to be the old, curmudgeon, but the danger is it's not aspirational. It may be aspirational as far as brands, but it's not aspirational as far as ideas. And I think what Drake gets hit with now, because he is like the master of the realm of that. Whereas his peers have gone in a different direction. J. Cole used to do songs about wanting to lose his virginity, right? Now J. Cole just spins tales and tells you 10 ways he's better than you, but it doesn't sound like the music he made 10 years ago. Kendrick Lamar just decides to go off the map, right? He just does it like, hey, you know what? I'm going skating. I'm going surfing and skating. I'm not really interested in that anymore, right?
Yeah.
So the big three, just how we had old Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas, and if that was ever a fair comparison, we now have a new big three. The big three is Drake, Kendrick, and Cole. And so that's where I think the infantilization really starts to hit, because those other two artists, they didn't maybe get as much commercial acclaim. You could debate with Drake and Kendrick, but they're now seen as like a notch above Drake.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was his response to it, because he has mastered the world of talking to people who's all week they just want to go to brunch.
Right. I guess because it's almost like the like Drake as soundtrack to the at least perceived life of, like, if you watch any of the reality TV show, dating shows of any ilk, they have the, like, I'm just trying to find somebody that's like serious about their life right now. You know what I mean? Or I gotta find somebody that's really down for me, because I'm going through a lot right now. You know what I'm saying? Trying to figure out, build my business. I really need a queen that's going blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? Or like whatever, I don't watch enough of them to have too many sound impersonations, but I think hopefully the world is getting where I'm going. Like that, the way you may look at the world as you're figuring yourself out in your 20s to 30, which may have, you might at least have enough experiences where you be like, yeah, I need somebody that's serious, like really down for me to be my mom, because you get your heart broke. You know what I'm saying? Or you get, as I say, you get your heart broke a couple times as a young man, and then you either pack your heart up and put it in your pancreas and hide it for later. You know what I'm saying? Or you
did you say pack your heart up, put it in by your pancreas?
Yeah, put it in your pancreas. You just gotta tuck that thing away.
Well, goddamn, pack your heart up and put it by your pancreas. Man.
You don't want
I gotta tell Messiah that, like, yeah, pack your heart up, put it by your pancreas.
Man, well, you don't want to do too much of that, because eventually you mess your pancreas up and your heart. But in the short term, it might help you not to get your feelings hurt again. You know what I'm saying, right? And then as a younger woman, and then I'm speaking within the partnership context, I feel safe to speak to. You might well, I don't really want to be getting too serious with nobody because I'm trying to work on my XYZ that I'm doing. So I compartmentalize the world in this way or that way. And when you get to that being this transactional like the predominant conversation that you see there, somebody shared a meme with me this week, and it was some outrageous. I don't even know whose podcast it was, and it was something ridiculous. And it was like black folks don't talk about nothing serious on podcasts. Like they always talk about like, yeah, I need a woman that's going to do this. Men need to figure out blah blah blah, right? And it was very so like if this context of what Drake feels like this is what the people want to hear, if they're gonna go party and turn up or ride around to my music, they wanna still my sweet spot is still somebody channeling through my conversation their own kind of internal dialogue about the ex last relationship they was in that you ain't really understand my value, you know what I'm saying, or you didn't appreciate me, or whatever. I'm better now that I broke up with you because blah, whatever. I don't live in that world, but the people that do.
But the danger is in it when it reaches like when it goes like you're mad at Rihanna because she's moved on. Like again, let's say you were a guy that pressed into that. Like to your point, I think you bring up a really good point. Yo, she's moved on with like a child and a half. Like she's about to drop. You know what I mean? They about to have some more babies.
Yeah, like
what, you mad because ASAP Rocky got her and you liked her? Like yo, like grow up. Like there's nothing else. Like grow up, man. Like yo, let that go. Now again, here's the thing. There's a lot of rappers I don't listen to that say the same stuff over and over again. And that's okay. And if you weren't Drake, maybe people wouldn't care. But they do because you're Drake. Right? Like they care because you're one of the new big three. And, there's no accident that the guy said, hey, man, after this, I'm going to take off a year to rap. Because I think I actually don't think he has anything else to say.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's not like jazz where it's like a new chord. Right? It's not like writing. It's like, yo, what else can you say is going to keep people interested that will reward you by coming to your show?
Mm-hmm.
And they want the same thing. They don't want anything new because maybe we're not in a world that's creating a space where like you want to hear James Brown say, I'm black and I'm proud. Like open the door. You ain't got to get it for me. I'll get it for myself. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't have a world where artists had to then start to think about doing political or cultural music. Right.
Yeah.
Like so I get it. And I don't want to like, almost like go too hard at homie, but I think it's a really interesting space of, finally that you can't take criticism from your art from someone who did the art.
Mm-hmm.
Like we often talk about people don't want to hear like Stephen A. Smith didn't play basketball. So you can't talk about me. Okay, but Joe Budden did rap at a high level.
Yeah.
So if it's anybody that should actually be able to have a conversation about that thing, it's actually him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I have issues with that construct, but I understand it where folks come, where, these sometimes where they're trying to come from. But that artists, especially if we're going, they're as elevated in their footprint. At some point, like, yeah, we need to have some sort of critique about what you're doing. Or if it's just ridiculous, it's like, yo, it's sort of ridiculous. Like I don't, no, the world should know I'm not losing any sleep over Drake's record. Like I must have been like, man, what we gonna do? I gotta go talk to my kids, make sure if they listen to this record that they understand what their values are. Like it's fine. Like Drake put it out there. That's the person he wanted to be. He wanted to have the hair clips in backwards or whatever in the video. I couldn't really tell what the hell was going on with that. Was that hair clips? Was that? I don't know. I'll look at it. I'll go research on my own at some point. But
it kind of like trying to be like Lil Yachty. Like I guess that was the other thing. Like you got hair clips like Lil Yachty, right? Like
Okay, yes.
And your
But
Lil Yachty is a really interesting character, and I think there's something to be said by keeping yourself close to youth culture because hip hop is youth culture,
yeah,
but also you have the ability to shift youth culture. But do you want? Maybe you don't want to. You know what I mean?
I don't know, but it's like you know to the degree that pop music is like pop music is always energized by young people, but not young people is paying for them $20,000 Taylor Swift tickets. You know what I'm saying? Like young people ain't paying for them tickets. Somebody grown that has the resources is paying for them tickets. Like if it when Drake goes on tour, I mean he got people that are, I've worked with some of them, peers who were 21, 19, 20, 21 in 2011. You know what I'm saying? And they the ones that's gonna like, yo, I'm going to Coachella and catch Drake again. But I saw him two times there. You know what I'm saying? Like, so as much as, and I guess that is still youth. That's not, not talking about like 15-year-olds necessarily, but it's an interesting place, I guess, to be at, and then that sometimes since I do listen to some, sports foolishness podcasts and things, which are usually a lens that is, I at least would say is more of a white lens. And so when I hear them talk about like folks from out that are definitely that consider themselves as onlookers to the world of like the hip hop culture in the way they like will reference an artist like a Drake, or 12, all of these people are just celebrities. Right. They're just celebrities who do some interesting or creative thing and are a part of a pantheon of entertainment spectacle. And on the other hand, like I'm looking at it like yo, is this the theme music to like men that don't want to grow up? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, man, we got like real, we were just talking about chaos in the goddamn Congress. We need like, maybe you can make a rap about your girl that you was dating 12 years ago and it ain't work out and you feel some kind of way because she got two babies with somebody else and seems to be having a good life. Maybe you can do that and have profound ideas about water policy. I don't know, but I'm concerned. I guess is where I'm going. I'm concerned that if you somewhere like, yeah, I feel how Drake feel. I'm still mad at what's the name because that ain't work out. I'm like, yo, man, like I guess, but we really need you got some serious social
we need
issues.
you over here.
We need you. We need you over on this other side of the room. Not to be somewhere, you know what I'm saying, turning out the networking event because somebody you dated, you know what I'm saying, 8 years ago come in, happy with someone else and you just can't deal with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm like, no. Like, no, you can't talk to her for a minute, dog. Like, what are you doing?
Is there a reason you brought him with you here?
Like, oh,
Why do you have to bring him here?
I see you haven't
Because this
changed
is my
one
boy.
bit.
Right. Now, you know what you still the same. I mean, Drake makes music for men who feel like that.
And I can't, I don't understand.
He makes music for men who would do that kind of thing. Like, and again, the if there's a space that he could be congratulated for where he brought, I would argue emo rap didn't start with Drake. I would say to me, the first place I heard it was Minds Playing Tricks on Me because that was them niggas was in a twist. Like it's schizophrenia, like it's a lot going on. And you could argue Ghost kind of brought it
Oh
to
yeah.
bear, right? X, right? Like there's a lot of people who did it. And so he kind of did it in a different way. Right, where I think previous were like extensions of male bravado, and some things that you could argue were either healthy and not healthy, right? But he did it in this like stealth, unhealthy way.
Yeah.
Like, I just want you, you with him now, you should be with me. Cause he ain't make you feel like I felt. Well, guess what? Obviously he is. It's too late. Let it go.
Mm-hmm.
It's over. Right? Like, and so we're at a place now where you've been reproducing this model for, again, a decade. And I think it's an amazing run. If you had a chance to say the same shit for a decade and nobody get mad,
Yeah. I mean,
I
give
think
him
you
his
should consider
credit.
yourself happy.
He
Consider
did it.
yourself
He did
worthy.
it. He did it with flair. I like some Drake songs. I ain't saying I don't like none of it. Some of it's like, oh, I rock with that song, Drake. There's some other songs I'm like, not so much for me, right? But yeah, I mean, he's
Well,
done it
you
with.
You aren't the target
Yeah, I'm
consumer.
not the target demographic.
I think you know that.
Yeah, I'm fully aware. Drake wasn't aware. Like, we can get
He did.
justice in here, man. We can open up
Yeah,
the
he did
whole
not. He
thing.
did not make the song thinking about if you was going to go buy merch.
Yeah, we got to get that 47-year-old father of two demographic. We got to get him in here. You know what I'm saying?
Well, once we get him, with no way we can lose.
Everybody's down. Well, you know what I mean? If anything justice like it, you know what I'm saying? He'll start retweeting us and everything. Like, no, it's not gonna happen, Drake. but
But yeah, man. So for me, it's just like it again. I think it's a part of the thing because besides a couple of artists, everybody's old but can't act like they're old, right?
yeah. That is and then definitely, yeah, that is a real phenomenon. Yeah, he'll be like, I'm still trying to figure out who I am.
Only a couple artists can like be old and we're okay with it, right? Like except that they're off to the like we're doing the cruises, right? Like there's a space of people who are doing the cruises. There's a nostalgia space, and I think Nas, Wu Tang, and De La Soul have been able to interestingly get to this place of older artists. I mean, older people, some nostalgia, and some younger people who, in their love of reproducing the '90s, which was 30 years ago, have happened upon this music, right? You know, it's like Messiah came and was like, he liked MF Doom, right? And it was like, okay, he likes Tyler. And so from Tyler, we kind of went back and he was like, yo, I feel this too. Because if you kind of like Tyler, there's some spaces where I see that kind of takes you back to Wu-Tang. It takes you, you know what I mean? It takes you
to lyrics saying all creative, interesting ways of delivering the music. And
it kind of takes you to a place. So I think there are some young people who are just going to like that in the same way when 70, kind of like that really interesting thing about like Fish, like in the 90s, where it would be like a 15-year-old that would go see Fish. It would be like, wait, Fish is like old as shit, but it'd be like, you know what I mean? Like a 15-year-old white girl. I'd be like, I love Fish.
That's my jam. Like,
and I think so. You have it the same way, but I do think, and for me, this isn't. I don't want people to be boring in hip hop regardless. Like I kind of like I heard, the thing about Duke Ellington said, what kind of music is it? It's two musics, good and bad. Mm-hmm. So this is not the thing that I want people to do bad music that suits my 47-year-old interest. I just think it's about what does growth look like and how does Black music, and hip hop is not alone in this. I think R&B is actually retarded as well. Mm-hmm. But what does it look like for music to represent the growth of the time, right? Without it just being like this one small space, but a broad thing that like children can listen to things that adults are saying and actually get something out of it versus children can only be talked to in the way that children have been talked to yesterday for growth. And in some ways it reflects the earlier through line of MSNBC, Fox News, right? Like,
this is our.
You keep talking the same way, you're gonna get the same shit,
right? And then the only alternative is either to be even more polar out in either direction. Is like the alternative. The alternative is not like some other place in between. The alternative is like, no, you got to go like deeper. We got like one of them podcast threads subscriptions, or I don't even want to say the name of them. You know what I'm saying? So that you can feel like you really, really, really got to your. And it's like, dang, man, I don't know. Is this good? Is this good for us? I don't know if this is good for us. So, word out. All right. Well, I think we did that. I think we covered it.
It was done.
Good to go. So, unless you got anything else, I'm saying for the good order, I say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ask Your Oldhead podcast. And you can support the podcast by rating, subscribing, sharing wherever you listen, on your social medias and the internets, or just to a dear friend. Otherwise, you can support the podcast by searching Justice Rajee on Patreon and become a patron. And you can subscribe to help me keep a little something in the kitty every month, so I can keep the proverbial audio lights on. In the event, hope you found the conversation useful, informing, entertaining, something. Hope take the best part for yourself. But thank you again for listening, and see you next time. Peace.